Russia talks. What's notable is who's not at the table. Ukraine. Plane slipped. This plane upside down, wheeled up. February freeze. The weather story is extreme cold. Good morning, I'm Cammie McCormick with the CBS World News Roundup. The U.S. and Russia have wrapped up their first meeting in Saudi Arabia, the beginning of a high-stakes effort that could improve relations and end the war in Ukraine. Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
I came away today convinced that they are willing to begin to engage in a serious process to determine how and how quickly and through what mechanisms can an end be brought to this war.
The two sides have appointed high-level teams to the talks, and a fair, enduring, and sustainable agreement, he says, can be found.
There have to be concessions made by all sides. We're not going to predetermine what those are. And there are other parties that have sanctions. The European Union is going to have to be at the table at some point because they have sanctions.
European leaders have felt excluded from the talks, but so has Ukraine. Rubio and his Russian counterparts have also agreed to restore staffing at embassies in Moscow and Washington and to explore closer relations. Russia freed another U.S. citizen as the talks got underway. He was being held on drug charges. Investigators will now try to determine why a Delta Airlines plane slipped upon landing at Toronto's airport yesterday. 21 people on the flight from Minneapolis were injured, 2 of them in critical condition. 80 were on board. Tom Hansen reports. Video of the aftermath shows the plane upside down on the tarmac, its wings and tail ripped off, and landing gear pointing toward the sky.
Everything, come on!
Flight attendants and crew members rushed to help stunned passengers strapped upside down in their seatbelts escape the wreckage.
It sounded, it was just cement and metal.
Pete Carlson was on the frightening flight.
All of a sudden, everything just kind of went sideways. Next thing I know, it's kind of a blink, and I'm upside down, still strapped in.
He says he knew he had to get off the plane quickly.
Took my seatbelt off, and as I took it off, crashed down onto the ceiling, which had become the floor.
Correspondent Chris Van Cleve on what the investigators will be looking for.
This appears to be a very hard landing, followed by a collapse of one of the rear landing gear, perhaps. That'll be a good starting point for investigators. Did the impact, the hardness of that landing, result in the gear collapsing? Did the gear collapse because of other reasons?
Some Americans used President's Day to make their voices heard. In Austin, Texas, a crowd unhappy over the involvement of Elon Musk. They want to remake the government into something that doesn't work for the people but works for them. There have been high-profile resignations. President Trump's acting Social Security Commissioner stepped down after objecting to those having access to sensitive records. Some federal workers could return after the holiday, only to find they're unable to enter their offices. Catherine Brainerd, the park ranger, is about to leave the Badlands for a job in Virginia when she got the notice.
I read it, then I started crying.
Here's correspondent Nancy Cordes.
Monica, who asked us not to use her last name, was hired by the FAA in December to be an aviation safety assistant at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport.
I personally did not feel that our positions were at risk for the simple fact that we are in the Flight Standards Safety Division.
But on Friday, she was let go. With less than a year on the job, she had not yet received civil service protection. The stinging dismissal email blamed her performance and said, you have not demonstrated that your further employment at the DOT FAA would be in the public interest.
There have been no negative comments or feedback until I got this letter about performance.
What this really does appear to be is just a purely false-based reason.
Employment lawyer Michal Shinar says the reason Trump's team has been citing performance in firing is because by law, probationary federal workers can only be removed for performance or misconduct.
4 minutes past the hour.
Well, that's today's news. I didn't hear any good news, did you? I didn't think so. I guess it's all about perspective. The glass is half full. Well, as always, I'd like to thank you again for coming along with me on these Dash Cab News adventures. You know the drill. Peace, love, and all that hippie jazz. Bye-bye, everybody. It's 42 degrees in Dublin, California.